Do you think you could give us a quick update on sort of the situation in Ecuador, particularly when it comes to the virus and how that perhaps compares to surrounding countries in the region? What does it look like for you as a country at the moment?
Well, let me tell you first that Ecuador was one of the first countries, just because of a coincidence, that the virus appeared. And that was very early in end of February, beginning of March. And that was probably because of a combination of factors. One is that there is some Chinese investment here. A Chinese entrepreneur came to Guayaquil. He felt ill and finally died in Guayaquil. And that was mid-February, end of February. By then, I think that the hospitals just didn't have enough information about the virus, nor did they have how system to know what kind of affection he had. He had a pulmonary problem and he died. So what we think, it's not something that has been just demonstrated, is that probably he was one of the very first guys who came with the virus. The second thing is that there are lots of migrants of Ecuador living in Spain and also in Italy, but basically in Spain. And they came to visit their families at the beginning of the new year here. And probably that was also a factor somehow, somewhere. Some of them or one of them came with the virus. What happened then, it was, especially in Guayaquil, that we had people dying of pulmonary diseases. And I'm talking about February, early March. And it was just that the virus was just going around. By March 13, the government decided to take the measurements that we all know, which is the strict confinement all over Ecuador. But it was probably for Guayaquil too late. And so what happened is that the deaths just skyrocketed. And it was incredible what happened by then. And of course, hospitals were not prepared. They didn't have, the physicians didn't have the equipment and so on. So a huge effort was done by the government and by the private sector to try to help in this case. And to make the story short, now Guayaquil has probably gotten the herd immunity because of, at each they are very active economically in Guayaquil. It's just working. They've had in the last 3 months, maybe 4 deaths or so.
Okay, yeah.
It just skyrocketed. I think many people got contaminated and with no signs, and then suddenly it went down again. But of course, this brought lots of people who died. So they calculate like 13,000 people died in Guayaquil. So it was because that's the difference between the amount of deaths that we normally have compared to the deaths we had in those days.
Yeah.
So the official figure is around 6,000 or something like that. That has been demonstrated that was COVID, what killed. So in Quito, there was no contamination by then. And so we've been in our houses for this long time. But then they opened a little bit. We don't have schools or things like that, but they opened a few businesses, and that brought the virus up, just like it has happened in England and elsewhere. And but what is happening then in Guayaquil is that the curve went up like that and then down like this. In Quito, it went very slowly up, and now we have a valley. And 2 weeks ago, we were in the maximum capacity of hospitals that were by then already prepared. People had the equipments and all that because, of course, like 3 months had passed, so there was time enough for hospitals to prepare themselves. And at this moment, there is a management of the virus, but it's still high in Quito. In Guayaquil, has gone very much down, and in the rest of the country, is relatively low. Then in Galapagos, we've had just very few cases. Happily enough, in the three towns, just 11 or 12 or 15.
Something, I suppose. Yeah, I relief.
That were just there with a cruise, we've had like 60 or so, because one of the boats had one guy, and of course all but there were no passengers. It was just the minimum crew that you must have in the ships, although they are not operating. So what happened is they were completely confined, and so
spreading. Yeah.
And now we had just last week a small spread of 6 people and things like that. So it's perfectly manageable.
Yeah.
At this moment, but that's the situation by now. Of course, the economy, like elsewhere, is a complete mess. People have lost their work. They have no income. Just the same story you see worldwide. Of course, in poor countries, it's even
double worse.
Many people who were poor people who lived in the cities went back to their homes in the countryside, and so now this is being managed, and things will change, of course, when we have the vaccine, and that is actually what really is going to happen. All the rest is just they're doing big efforts now to try to make that many businesses go back to normal. Very difficult, and especially in tourism, that is especially difficult. The restaurants, of course, at a very low capacity, and then people not daring to go to the restaurants, and so it's all this stuff. We have opened our business, the hotel in MASHPI, the hotel in the forest, is almost full to the capacity that is authorized. That is like 75% of the total capacity. But basically of locals who are going there to just that they want to go out of their houses and go and be in contact with nature. So that has happened, and we're doing a very strict protocol, and until now, it's already a month that we haven't had one case. So it's working. Our hotel in Quito just doesn't work. Nobody goes there, not even to the restaurant. We have decided, we created a new business of very fine quality of food. It's called Mikui, and that is, we send you what you have requested, but you elaborate yourself the product. So it's
home cooking from your beautiful ingredients, kind of thing.
It's indicated well, it's already cooked. Actually,
right.
Like a Lego, you just build it up, and you have the sauces, and it's very interesting, and it has worked relatively well. It just covers its cost, but we're keeping our chefs working, and that has been important. In Galapagos, the hotel is open, but we've had very, very little number of tourists, basically locals from Ecuador, and just one of our 3 vessels are operating now, and not on a regular basis. Just when we have a date, and if we have at least 10 passengers of 48 capacity, then the ship will travel, basically to keep again the crew working and the machines working and things like that.
Yeah.
But business like is just
Yeah.
covering, in the best case, the costs.
Yeah. And do you have any travel corridors open with other countries coming into Ecuador, or is it still closed to international?
Airports, international airports are open,
Mm.
but the number of flights are just very, very few.
Mm.
And you have some requirements, and that is to get into Ecuador, you need to have a negative PCR
Mhm.
10 days before the trip.
10
And
days,
then
yeah.
and then to go to Galapagos, you need that your PCR is 4 days early. So you might come with some time before here, and you have to do another PCR here, or travel for 4 days before you go to the Galapagos, and then you just need one PCR.
Yeah,
Uh,
sure.
that's a condition both for traveling to Ecuador and traveling to the Galapagos. And
Yeah.
of course, it's a lot of mess, so there's not much people who want to do that.
Yeah, you have to be
So
determined to.
very strongly for next year. Um, uh, our reservations are very, very high, and for 2021, beginning very early in January and February, we're already having lots of reservations,
Wow.
and um, and of course we're preparing ourselves for those dates,
Yeah.
because before that we see that it's just a marginal business.
Yeah. Are there different restrictions to entering Galapagos, being, such an isolated island area? Is it easy to get? I mean, if you're Ecuadorian, or if do travel in Ecuador, are there new levels of restriction in order to visit Galapagos, or is it just the same as
Not just the
coming into
one I
Ecuador?
told you. You need
Yeah.
to do a
Okay.
PCR that is it has 96 hours as maximum.
Sure. Okay. Okay.
That would be the only limitation.
Yeah, sure. Okay. And it's interesting you say that we've had this a lot from certainly, we would call it a staycation. Lots of people obviously visiting things that they perhaps wouldn't have chance to do before because they are locked down in their country. So is it a good opportunity for some people in Ecuador to visit Galapagos perhaps for the first time in their life? They wouldn't have thought it and things like that.
Oh yes, that's happening a lot.
Mm.
But more than to Galapagos, because people here would travel probably with children also. And to do a PCR for a child is
Yeah.
just very complicated. And
Yeah.
so it's more adults that will go to Galapagos, just a few. But we're having lots of people going to MASHPI.
Yeah.
Uh, and we have a protocol there, but it has just worked very well. Very small groups.
Yeah.
We check very much our employees. We're doing PCRs for them all the time.
Mm.
So each
Wow.
time they come in, before they come in, they must get the PCRs, and then they stay at the hotel.
Mm.
Um and so until they've been there several weeks, and then they go away, and a new group comes in, but all with PCRs.
Yeah.
That's the way and it could happen that somebody who comes as a client could have the virus.
And then the
That's
whole
some
lodge would be at risk. Yeah.
of the risk, but we're keeping the distance. The capacity of the hotel is 44 people maximum. We're admitting 30.
Mhm.
Actually, every weekend we're in 30.
Mhm. Mhm.
During the week, we'll be half of that, maybe a little bit more. And
Mhm.
again, it covers our costs and a little bit more than covering the basic
Mm.
costs. It's not enough to see
Yeah,
a good result.
a
It's just
return. Yeah. Uh,
surviving a
yeah,
surviving.
survival mode. Yeah. And have you had any indication, or does anybody in the tourism sector have an idea of when more flights might start coming in, or
Well,
pickup might take on?
in number, they are increasing in number, um, slowly, very slowly. It's just that the airlines don't have enough passengers, and
Supply and demand, yeah.
so because any trip is just a sense of risk that people just do it not as a pleasure like
Yeah.
normally a tourist trip. So the conclusion we're making is that business is going to be back in January. That's basically what we believe.
Yeah.
And we hope that the vaccines will be ready for, especially the two markets that we get the maximum flow, and that is from the States, that's like 56%, and then from England, like 15 or more percent, almost 20. And so those two countries for us are very important that they can get the vaccine, because both countries are in
So
not a
important.
shape related to the virus. Like Germany, for instance, or things like that, is in a better situation. But if we don't have a vaccine, very little to be done. And I hope that the tourist companies could get vaccines and offer the packages with a vaccine. So the
Well, that
combination.
would be a very entrepreneurial thing to for someone to come up with, wouldn't it? Really.
We've seen that already of several companies doing that effort to try to get the vaccine, so that when I offer you the package includes in the price the vaccine. And so 15 days before you travel, you get the vaccine and then you travel. Because
Wow.
probably what's going to happen at least the next year or so is that to get to a plane, they're going to ask you for the vaccine, probably. Just like with the yellow fever or things like that.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you go back to normal in the sense that whether the virus is controlled or not in the country where you're traveling, the issue, the thing that you have either had the vaccine or you have been a COVID.
Yeah, you have your antibodies, and so you've had suffered it before. Yeah, of course.
That is the kind of plan that we have as a company. On the other hand, we're seeing very good numbers of reservations done by international companies asking for our services. So
yeah, without those things, yeah.
waiting the day that they can make a trip to Galapagos or to our country, because it's really just to break with this.
Yeah.
What you probably feel in your house, what I feel here, just to be almost like a prisoner.
Yeah,
No?
yeah, of course.
He wants to go to a bar or something like that after being so much time.
Yeah, of
in the
course.
room.
And I'm sure you've taken, as brilliant care of your staff, and please tell me how many you have across the business during this. But you've also been involved in a much wider fundraising effort. Is that correct? To try and help
Oh, yes.
other people as well. Yeah.
The first of our company. Our company has around 850 employees, and we decided not to keep them all. Just very very few. I think 5 people or so that were just in the training program. We decided there was nobody who could train them, so
Yeah.
they of course had to go home. But they were not regular employees. All regular employees, we have kept them.
Wow.
And it has been a huge effort from our side. But again, the big value of Metropolitan Touring is the people we have. It's really an amazing group of people who love their work, who does it with lots of love and very good training. And so to leave them now was not fair, because they give us all the prestige, all the good results. So now it's time to put our money. And so we have the shareholders, we decided to put our money, but also to request bank lending to survive. we thought first it would be until July, then to
Yeah.
September. Finally, now we think it's January. So that in reference to our employees. In reference to, what was your second question?
You set up the Por Todos, is that correct?
Fondo Por Todos, yes,
Por Todos, yeah.
it means for all in Spanish. And I was here in this house, and I saw on television what was happening in Guayaquil, just very early, about the 18th of March or so. And I said, no, I can't stay here just sitting around and not doing something. So I decided to try to create a fund. Originally, I thought of $20 million.
Wow.
Phone calls. But I had a lot of success because in 3 weeks, sorry, 6 weeks, I managed to collect $6 million. And then we collected in total $8.3 million.
Wow.
And with that, we have done lots of very valuable things. I created a trust fund to guarantee the perfect usage of these funds. So it doesn't happen what happened with the wall in between Mexico and the United States. That the guy who's collecting keeps half of the money for himself. So we built a trust fund, and with an auditing company, Pricewaterhouse, who decided to give her help also. And we were very strict deciding in what we would invest, and it would be basically in what was more important wherever in the country this would happen. So the very first thing we did is we contacted the specialists of this, because we were a group of entrepreneurs or businessmen who just didn't know nothing about a pandemic. And we were very lucky to get 5 or 6 people who were experts in pandemics. One of them was the president of here in Ecuador, and now she is actually the president of CARE International. I don't know if you've heard of this company, this organization.
Yeah.
That she had been in Haiti during the earthquake, and in Syria during the war, and in Somalia during the war. So she knew how to manage these things. And then 3 physicians, all women, that's all women, who were experts in this kind of virus and pandemics and things like that. So they helped us a lot, and also an Ecuadorian who is the director of the laboratory of genetics in Berkeley. And she helped us with the other part, the medical part of how to treat a virus with the most advanced concepts. And so what we did is first, of course, try to help the people who were starving, who just were very poor people who were in their huts, small houses, but with no food. And so we gave food to 177,000 people.
Wow.
Through 3 organizations that helped us, that were CARE International, Children's Fund, and what's the third one? And International Plan, it's called. They all work here in Ecuador, and they knew the people who needed this help. And so we gave them, if they didn't live if they lived in the countryside and just couldn't get the food, we gave them food. If not, if they were in the cities, we gave them money. And so we gave them $60 per family for each month. So they try their basics, very basics, but to survive. And so we reached almost 180,000 people with this help. And then on the medical side, just at the very beginning, as I told you, there was absolutely no equipment for the magnitude of the problem in the hospitals in Guayaquil. And so we gave $1 million just to import from China the personal protection equipment,
Yeah.
and some specific equipments for diagnosis of pulmonary diseases.
Mm-hmm.
Then of course, we spent more money getting more equipment for hospitals in other parts of the country. We gave food actually in all areas, in the Galapagos Islands, in the coastal areas, in the Amazonian region. And it was very interesting. In the Amazonian region, we reached the Indian communities that are very small groups that have their own language. We have 15 of those groups, like the Sionas and the Secoyas. They're very small and really wonderful groups where all the knowledge is held by the elderly.
Yeah.
And so if they would be reached by the virus, we would lose their knowledge, because the guys who will first die will be the elderly. And so we reached them with food so that they wouldn't go to the villages and get infected there.
Yeah. And also, I assume, so they could communicate down, because if people trust the elders, they would then listen to what they had to say. If they said, no, this virus is here, you mustn't behave in these ways.
Not only that, but the knowledge that they have about, let's say, all the botanical knowledge that they have about botanical medicines and things like that is held by the elderly, not the young ones. And so all that, and also their traditions and all that stuff. So we did that also. Then we decided to build triage.
Triage, triage.
We've built at this moment 28 of them, and in near to different hospitals or places where we could first receive the people so that they wouldn't go if they had another illness, or if it was something that they could treat themselves at home. And that has been very, very successful. Then we ordered, of course, PCRs and how you call it, the two types of
the swab and
the one with the we did those two things, but we did something very interesting additional to that, and that is with the help of Berkeley, we got the formula for producing here the most effective fast trial that is called ELISA. And we're producing it now here, and we have produced 260,000 of those.
And what does that do? What is it? What does it do?
No, it's for a trial for the fast.
For having the test, doing the test quickly.
The fast test.
Right.
But there are several quality of tests, but this one is the most effective. It has 99% effectiveness, and the Berkeley got us the formula for producing it here.
Wow.
And so he gave us the basic elements with the advice of this Ecuadorian who leads this laboratory, and we're producing it now here in Ecuador.
Wow.
And so instead of paying something around $20 for that, it costs $3 now.
Yeah.
So it's been very successful. So all these things have been done with these resources.
Yeah.
And an incredible experience, really.
Amazing. Yeah. So when people need to, how much they can come together and help when there's such a terrible circumstance.
And now I decided to promote a new idea because 4 funds were created by the private sector here. And so I called the other 3 funds and asked them, this was last week, I decided to try to help the government in developing a strategy for the vaccination. Because, of course, now comes another new thing that is not necessarily in the mind of the authorities, in the sense that they're, of course, looking for the vaccine, but that's just one element of the whole process. You must have a strategy. Who are you going to vaccinate first? Are you going to vaccinate the children, or are you going to vaccinate the elderly? Are you going to vaccinate the military, or are you going to vaccinate the young people who move more? Are you going to give more importance to education, or are you going to give more importance to production? In which areas? What are you going to do with the people who have been infected already and that have survived? So it's a lot of thinking and planning before the vaccine is even available.
Yeah, you need to have that structure in place, as you said, to know what to do with it when it arrives.
Exactly, and you have regulations also that the government has, that vaccination only is being done by the government, but in this case, you need the help of private hospitals. And so you must amend that regulation. And all those things, it's a lot of issues. Yeah. So we began to work this week with the Ministry of Health. This afternoon, I have a Zoom with him and with all the other, and of course, all experts are now in the commission. We're like something like people or 15 people who are thinking on how are we going to transport the vaccine that needs to be in cold, and how are we going to go to the countryside? Well, all those things we're thinking now, because the vaccines are going to be available probably the earliest in December or January. By then, all the system must be ready to do what you have planned to do. Yeah. So that's our new effort at this moment.
Wow. Well, I mean, the greatest respect for that. It's an enormous project. I'm not even sure our government has ever started any thinking along those lines. But now you're also, I know, heavily always have been involved in conservation. And perhaps if we start to talk now a little bit more about nature, some people obviously saying that during this time, nature has had the chance to bloom back to life where perhaps there would have been lots of humans ordinarily. Are you seeing any perhaps unique things happening amongst wildlife or nature with this pause?
Well, there's both things happening at the same time. One is that we, the humans, have made less noise, reduced the contamination of the atmosphere somehow. But more than that, we're not occupying areas where wildlife normally is and that competes with humans. So we've seen very interesting things like films that have been done in Quito, in the city, where condors have landed in the how you call it, azotea, in the roofs of the buildings. So there's a film that is just amazing of a condor just standing on top of a building that I've never seen a condor in Quito. I've never seen I saw it when I was young, but I haven't seen for 60 years a condor. And there was a couple of condors just flying above the buildings. And so that is an example of something that never before happened. And of course, in Galapagos now we see groups of huge numbers of dolphins getting into the Academy Bay, where normally our boats are anchored. Well, now you see humpback whales coming in with small whales, and I saw films last week that they sent me about this happening just in front of where we go back and forth with the dinghies. No, because there's no movement. Well, they're just there.
Wow.
So that's an example of things that are happening here in this small farm. We have seen at least 6 or 7 species of birds that we hadn't seen before.
Ever? Wow. Incredible.
Ever. And this is near to Quito, so we have the same. We have localized 60 species of birds just here in my small farm. Maybe 10 or 12 of those we had never seen before. And they're just there.
Yeah.
So I'm a bird watcher and I'm just
thrilled to see these things. Yeah. Wow. Amazing.
On the other hand, the bad news is that, of course, the government can't control, especially the cutting of forest. So there are in some places something of that is happening, but not in a large scale. But again, because again, there aren't even trucks that would take the wood away. So I think it's not really a big issue at this moment because of this real limitation.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
that I could tell you about what's happening there.
Yeah, we've heard in some countries where, perhaps out of desperation, people have started poaching, for survival, things like that, or if desperation makes them do things that would normally they wouldn't do. But it sounds like that hasn't been the case too much where you are, and it's the reverse, and people appreciating.
And more the people are more conscious now of how important it is to treat nature and our mother nature in a different way.
With the respect.
There's been a lot of comments of how important it is to try to understand that we can't just destroy our environment in the way we have been doing until now. So there's, I feel much more a sense of conservation and management of the environment than the idea of the destruction. It's much, at least here in Ecuador.
Well, that's great. That's great to hear. But I think you were involved again in a terrible thing that I've been told is happening around the Chinese fishing fleets that have been coming into Galapagos. I assume when they think nobody is looking, or I don't know, there's no patrols. But what's been happening there, and how big of a threat is it?
It is something that has happened since 2017.
Oh, okay. It's not I thought it was an immediate, more sort of a lockdown thing.
Where a Japanese fleet now, it's a huge fleet of 340 ships, so it's an incredible thing. And already in 2017, Ecuador tried to stop what was happening, and a ship that was taking what had been fished back to China crossed without being careful, crossed the marine reserve of Galapagos, and our navy stopped it and took into jail. They were 4 years in jail, actually.
Right.
Years in jail. But last year they could fly back to the Chinese crew. And they found there were 300 tons, basically, of sharks, including a whale shark. And they had fished it not in the reserve, but just outside of the reserve. And we are trying to protect those animals in our reserve, and that we have been doing since 1986.
Yeah.
So it's been a huge effort from our side, and so it has absolutely no logic that something like that would happen. We protect, and the Chinese come here and just take it, because of course fish don't.
They don't respect boundaries themselves, do they?
So now that they came back again, we began a big effort to try to agree among all the countries that are part of the southeastern part of the Pacific, that is Chile, Peru, Ecuador, and Colombia, to agree and make a claim to United Nations against China. And we have developed that, and now we're preparing ourselves so that to sit down and negotiate with China first on a friendly manner, especially that they shouldn't be near to the Galapagos Islands, but also that they can't do the kind of fishing they're doing now. So we're going to impose that on board of each ship, whatever its flag may be, although they are in international waters, that they must have, if they come to fish, they must have a observer on board that reports their work, because they're actually almost pirates in the sense that they have no observer on board. They use fishing techniques that are banned. They turn down their satellite localization system. They change flag, and they even change their identification numbers, hacking identification numbers of other ships and presenting them as their own. So this is a fleet that is heavily subsidized by China. So it's not only a private problem, it's a public problem. So this is a huge diplomatic effort we're doing now, and it's been successful.
Yeah.
In the sense that, of course, next year, in January or February 2021, China will hold the biodiversity world meeting or something like that. I can't remember the exact name of this. And they better have a clean face for doing that. So we're trying to use that opportunity to come to an agreement with them that they accept all these limitations.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And so that is one part. The second part, maybe more interesting, is that we're trying to increase the size of the reserve.
Okay.
That is a very positive thing. Of course, there we have with our own fishing fleet a problem. Because of course they go and fish in that area, and that's authorized. Although they do have inspectors on board, and they do limitate the kind of fishing, especially long lines are the ones that do the worst damage. And but we have discovered with a lot of science that there are two migrating paths or ways of fish that are protected in the Galapagos. One goes to the northeast to an island that is just in front of Costa Rica. It's called the Cocos Island. And the Cocos Island is part of this cordillera that goes from the Galapagos to Cocos. Yeah. And that is a migrating way, back and forth. Large numbers of whale sharks, of whales, turtles, and mantas make this trip. Because we place them with satellite equipment, and we know that they do that trip. And so we're in negotiation now with Costa Rica, who has in principle accepted to do that protection. And probably we're going to create one of the largest areas by national protected areas in the world.
That seems like a very big distance to have.
It's a long distance, not very wide, because as
so
wide
just
as
a channel where they just seem to favor that current. Yeah,
it's something around 260,000 quadrat kilometers, a little more than Ecuador in size.
Wow.
So we're going also to increase around the Galapagos another area of 400,000 quadrat kilometers. So it'll be a 600,000. We're talking something that will be like 4 times Ecuador, 5 times the size of Colombia almost. So it's a big. And there, of course, it's interesting that we have been in contact with, due to the fact that you're in London, with the Ministry of Environment of the UK, because they're promoting a fund that has been funded with English money, 500 million, 500 million pounds, and it's called. I'll tell you. So many pages. Let's see. The name of the fund, and so it's called the Ocean Global Alliance, and the fund is called Blue Action Fund.
Wow. Okay.
And so that is promoted by the UK, and we have been in talks with the it's called Biodiversity Beyond National Jurisdiction, also the BBJ program. And this is the Global Ocean Alliance that is called 3030. That is by the year 2030, 30% of all marine, of the global marine area of the planet should be protected. And that is the idea. And so we have been in discussions about this project with the Minister of the Environment, and he has shown a lot of interest in supporting Ecuador in this objective. His name is Goldsmith, the Minister of the Environment.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
the Blue Planet Fund.
Yeah.
So we're working on that. And that is my biggest effort at this moment on conservation, try to create this big area of conservation.
Yeah. And so what do you see as being the biggest objections to this going ahead?
Well, the fisheries, of course, the fisheries from Costa Rica, from Ecuador, that make longline fishing along this cordillera because they know that they have the fish there. So we will have problems with them, but I believe that we will manage to find some solutions for their fishing method so that they change the fishing method to something that doesn't destroy and that they don't fish in that area. But we need, of course, to have the capacity of surveillance, because just drawing on the map is not enough.
Yeah.
So part of my effort is to collect a $60 million fund, because we need something like $3 million per year for funding all the surveillance and also the support for this fishermen to change their
change their career, even if they wanted to
doing business. So
yeah, sure. Okay. One of the other things that we've been a bit worried about is that with nobody traveling, tourism at a standstill, tourism would often fund conservation projects and obviously ignite interest in civilians, humans, to pay more attention to it. Do you have any fears around that? Or any of your projects, I mean, not these vast ones that you're talking about, but perhaps some of your own within Met Touring that are, more reliant on those donations you get from or funds from tourism? Has that been an issue for you?
Well, for us, not, because we do it directly. We impose.
Right.
We don't ask for money. We oblige our travelers to pay. I don't know if they have told you. We began exactly this year with that, and from January on, we will even charge a little bit more. And that is basically that we decided to fix a rate of $16 per ton of CO2. And when we quote, if you quote with us a travel to Ecuador, while you're asking all the trips you want to make, in our computer we will have a calculator that automatically will indicate how much CO2 your trip is going to emit.
Yeah.
So I will charge you for each ton $15 or $16. So on an average, somebody who comes from England, if I charge also the flight, we're talking about 2 tons that it would emit. Basically,
Okay.
it's
Yeah.
a little
Okay.
more, less, but around that. So it'll cost $32.
It's nothing, is it? Really? Yeah.
Nothing. But if you charge that, and we tell them, you can't. It's not that we ask that if you want or not. If you want to travel with us, this is a condition. Okay.
Yeah.
So, but if we multiply by 30,000, then of course we're
Starts to
talking
make an impact. Yeah.
of money, and that goes directly to a trust fund.
Yeah.
And with that, we try to protect forests.
Okay.
We guarantee then that your money will absorb CO2 according to what we're charging to you.
Yeah.
And through this system, last year we bought 1,300 hectares of forest, additional to the 1,200 that we have bought before just from our money. So we have now 2,500 hectares of primary forest in MASHPI.
Wow.
But we
Yeah. Of course.
go on buying, we will begin to pay to the owners of their forest, of owners who want to get into this program. And the basic idea is to let them develop their business if possible. If they want to do tourism, just do tourism. If they want to produce other products from the forest, that's their business, but not the forest itself. So very nice things we have been doing on that field, and that is a complete research, not only on the biological side, but on the use of products that come from the forest for food, and especially for very sophisticated gastronomy. So we signed an agreement with the I call it in English, this gastronomy center in San Sebastian in Spain. It's famous. And they sent us 2 chefs who have been working with the biologists in MASHPI, collecting products of the forest and seeing if you can produce a tasting experience that are just unique and delicious and not toxic. Because we're working with lots of like mushrooms,
Yes.
stems, flowers, insects, and of course we must see that the product is first
palatable, tastes okay, yeah, and then it's not poisonous.
And it has been an incredible experience. We have already several products that are unique. Now, of course, it all stopped because of the. But we will come back to the same project in January or February. So those are the things. Yeah.
Amazing. And just quickly now, I'm conscious of the time. A few words about the other countries that you operate in, Colombia, Peru. Any kind of headlines from there in terms of whether your projects there are what's happening with them, or what your hopes are for them as destinations?
Different to Ecuador, both Peru and Colombia are completely closed. Complete. Airports are not working. People are, and they're suffering a lot, especially Peru. Peru is in a very difficult situation, and so they're doing their best to control, but they've had less luck than we have had. And Colombia is like midway, and so, but Bogota, for instance, allows no flights at this stage, and so. Uh, all our people are just working from home and doing very little because there's nothing special
to do. Yeah.
Just prepare for again for next year. And our project, Guayabero, that was ready to begin the construction, that was so amazing place. It's probably that's my new favorite place in the world, probably. If you want to see something unique in your life, you would have to go there. It's this river of colors is something that is just, I don't know. When you see that, your tears will begin to come out of your eyes because it's just amazing. The place, it's just amazing. And it has stopped, of course. There are no flights. Impossible to go to the place, and so we're just keeping the land. We were ready to begin the construction already of the hotel. We will reevaluate, but we will do it. We will do it, and that is one project we had there. And the second project that was almost in the best moment of not yet taking the decision, like in Guayabero, but it was this boat we wanted to have, the river boat, to travel the Magdalena River. And that is just, again, a unique case, just incredible place. And then in Peru, we went to Paracas, and we had decided to build there also in the middle of the desert a project. So that is still in its initial states, and of course, again, because of the pandemic, it's just in standby. But we were also working hard in Panama. For a project that would a boat that would travel from the eastern side of the Pacific of Panama, and then cross the channel and go to the western side and go back and forth, crossing the channel. And we were very, very advanced in that project also, again, just and then opening several facilities, at least 2 in Costa Rica. That was also part of our plan. So we must wait until because what will happen with us is because of this indebtedness that we've gotten now, we will have to at least wait 2 years for new projects because we will have first to pay
that back. It's a sensible way to go.
So things will go on being done. Maybe Guayabero we will go on, but all the others will have to wait.
Okay. But as a final word, do you remain? Where does your sense of optimism come from? Do you remain positive, for the future in tourism?
Well, in tourism, I remain very positive, although I am conscious that we'll have a new situation. Something that worries me is flights. I don't know how the air business is going to go on in the future. And even just what is happening with you and me this moment, that we're having the Zoom, will make me a big question mark of the business traveler, what is going to happen with him. So it's a big question. And of course, they help us a lot to keep rates down.
The planes, we've got to keep the planes full in order for them to operate, haven't we? That mix, as you say, business travel, cargo, leisure, all has to be in a perfect mix for the airlines to operate with any profitability.
So some changes. I'm not worried because of my business. My business is on the high end, and so who are my clients? If there is a difference in price, even the price of double, they'll still pay for it.
Yeah. Or they
But
might travel by private jet, perhaps to some
not even that, but probably the price of the flight is not something that will keep
stops them.
them.
Yeah. Yeah.
But for the rest of passengers, this might be a big question mark if they're going to make long haul flights. And there, and I have a question mark for tourism.
Yeah.
So, but on the other hand, locals are going to make much more locally. So
Yeah.
they'll, or border countries. So Colombians and Peruvians will come to Ecuador, and Ecuadorians will go to Peru
Yeah.
and Colombia instead of going to the States or to Europe.
Yeah. Which is better overall for in terms of that CO2 question. If we're traveling shorter, more locally, then we're not pumping out a lot of aviation fuel. But it just has to be in balance, doesn't it? Everybody has to have, enough of a local market to keep them going, so that then people don't start to lose out on
some big adjustments, especially in the short time. Many will not be able to get back to the business. Just they'll be broke. Others will have to do a big effort just to with lending, getting slowly back to their business. And then what I always say, the big difference, we must all begin from zero almost again, but with one big difference. And the big difference is that we have the experience we didn't have when we just began with the business. So that makes a big, big difference. And so I believe that the recovery will be, it takes some time, but there'll be a recovery. That would be my idea.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it seems like a good point to leave the conversation. So again, thank you so much for your time. That was so interesting to hear about everything that you've been up to. And God willing, some British people will be back to see you soon over there. Maybe next year, some point next year. Yeah.
Because they are really first class visitors for us, because they come with a love for nature. And what I most regard of that is their love for botany.
Yeah.
They know so much about botany that others just have no idea whatsoever. They know the names of the plants, the genera. It's amazing to just walk with them. I have so few friends in England, and when they come here, it's just a learning procedure for me.
And I'm sure it's those people who are most passionate about nature and the things that they love that will be the keenest to get back out there as well. So let's hope that doesn't happen. That happens fairly soon. Okay, well, thank you so much. Have a lovely day and a great week, and I'll be watching to see what happens. Okay.